So what is your best educated guess about what school will look like in the fall? And in this case, someone is asking about elementary school, but we've had some other questions about preschool. We've had some questions about summer camp, and I know there are parents out there who are wondering about college too. So what do we think?
Do you want
Alison, I think this is
let me jump in. So I've been fortunate enough to be part of conversations at 3 of those levels of educational institutions. So an elementary school, a K-12 school, and a college in terms of planning for next year. And I will say this is really hard. I mean, talk about moving targets, right? And you know, what we're not getting yet is really clear guidance from states or from the CDC about how to do it. There's no manual from the CDC, and I know so far of only one state that has put out a manual for higher ed on like literally what do you have to do. And so you know, schools and colleges are starting to plan, and what they're planning for is flexibility. I think every school and college recognizes that there is at least a pretty good chance, I don't know where to put it, it's different in different places, but it's not zero, that the whole fall, for example, could be remote again. Which I'm sorry if like everyone's stomach just dropped, but
or if it doesn't start remote, we need the flexibility to go remote.
Exactly. So whatever was like much more quickly put in place in March at schools, I think they're starting to recognize like, let's be a little bit more deliberate about, you know, what that actually looks like so that it's an enriching, rewarding, you know, experience for the kids of any age. At the same time, I think everyone is very keen to figure out how to do something in person. And that looks like tweaking the calendar, right? Can we get their kids there sooner and maybe they leave by Thanksgiving if it's a residential situation? But also the same idea that we were talking about for get-togethers this summer, you know, small and what was the word for closed cohort? Similar. It's like the same network.
Consistent.
That could work for schools too, right? So we're calling it radical cohorting in Philadelphia. Could we think about putting kids, and when I say kid, that's going to be a preschooler or a college freshman, in a group of 10, 20, maybe at colleges, maybe it's 40, and that group stays together all day, all term. You can immediately start thinking of all the problems here and the challenges. But if that group has a couple of teachers, the right ratio to get those kids schooling, that's a more likely way to sort of stay safe and stay open for more of the fall than any kind of schooling where the whole school gets together or kids are mixing around or specials teachers move from classroom to classroom. That helps limit transmission, and it really helps, as we've talked about with contact tracing, if there is an exposure or a case, ideally only that pod of kids maybe has to bump home for 2 weeks. What have you guys been hearing from your institutions?
Well, so I want to just elaborate on one point that you just made, which is this idea of radical cohorting, and the reason that would be an effective way to prevent to do outbreak control, right? So I've been talking a lot about, people keep asking me about the vaccine, and to be honest, the news about the vaccine is not great. It's going to take a while. It's going to take longer than you're hoping for. And
let's put a pin in that and come back to that conversation too.
We do need to talk about that too. And so people are like, okay, but what about herd immunity? Herd immunity is what I study, and I can tell you that is also not going to save us. Herd immunity is not the solution. So I think that leads people to be like, well, then what? What do we do? And what we have to do is this thing called outbreak control. Outbreak control relies on us limiting the number of hosts that the disease can get to. And the best way to do that, the most effective way is these lockdowns that we've all been in for the last several weeks. That's not sustainable. And so the second best way to do it is to prevent those contact networks from getting really big. And so if you have a group of 50 kids and 6 teachers and they're exposed to just them in school each day, that's a lot better than the typical pattern, which is where all the kids, you've got, in my son's 4th grade classroom, for example, they do co-teaching across 3 classrooms. So it's 75 kids and 3 teachers plus the specials teachers. And then And they all mix all day long. And then at lunchtime, they go to the cafeteria with the entire school and spread germs among the however many kids are in the whole school, 600 kids or whatever. That's a very big network. And then when you start to add in all their parents and all their siblings and all the schools their siblings go to, that's a very big contact network. So this idea of breaking the chains within that contact network, I think it's something people haven't had a lot of practice thinking about, but it's really important for doing outbreak control.
And may I offer another just thing about school too? Like, I think we think a lot about outbreak control. We think a lot about radical cohorting and safety and sort of the metrics and the methods to make this all safe. But we also appreciate and understand how important schools are to the fabric of our society. We are not being public health schools here, right? Like, we honor the importance of schools. We honor that often it's an equity issue, that vulnerable children need to be in school perhaps more than anyone else. So it's a very solution-focused conversation, I would say, which is heartening, right?
Good point, Lindsey.
Well, and it's a place that's going to need, I mean, for all the folks who are listening, if you can volunteer any skills, expertise, resources you have to your local public school districts or a local college or the college your kids go to help figure this out, do so, because they need even just, you know, some grunt work, some brains on creative solutions that will work with whatever guidance we end up getting from the state, and that can flex and be nimble as, you know, the new epidemiologic news sort of rolls in the fall.
And we can look to Europe and Asia. I mean, they have a jump on us.
They do. They do. We'll get some good learnings from all the places that have reopened in different ways.